The year is 2025. At the heart of the storm stands Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, whose recent pronouncements have sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in both Washington and Mexico City. As long as the United States refuses to change its perspective on Latin America, she declared, her voice ringing with determination, we will not hesitate to escalate our response. Sheinbaum's declaration was not a rash outburst but a calculated response to what she perceives as a pattern of disrespect and economic aggression from the United States. The immediate trigger for Sheinbaum's defiant stand was a series of economic measures imposed by the Trump administration, including tariffs on Mexican imports and the deployment of troops to the border. Sheinbaum announced retaliatory tariffs on United States goods and suspended key cross-border economic cooperation projects, signaling that Mexico would not be bullied on the world stage. As businesses scramble to assess the potential fallout, one thing is clear: the relationship between the United States and Mexico has entered uncharted territory, and the stakes have never been higher. Donald Trump, never one to shy away from confrontation, has built his political career on a platform of economic nationalism and a hardline stance on immigration. His decision to impose tariffs on Mexican goods, a move that blindsided many in his own party, is seen by some as a reckless gamble aimed at appeasing his base and fulfilling campaign promises. Instead of capitulating to United States demands, Mexico has chosen to stand its ground. Sheinbaum's government has made it clear that it will not be used as a pawn in Trump's domestic political gamesmanship. Adding fuel to the fire, Trump's decision to deploy 1,500 troops to the United States-Mexico border has further inflamed tensions. Despite his tough talk, Trump has shown some willingness to negotiate, at least superficially. Mexico's response to Trump's aggressive trade tactics has been swift and calculated. President Sheinbaum, refusing to be intimidated, announced a series of retaliatory tariffs targeting key United States exports to Mexico. Beyond tariffs, Mexico holds other economic levers it can pull. The country is a major supplier of crude oil to the United States, and any disruption to this flow would have significant repercussions for American consumers already grappling with rising gas prices. Furthermore, Mexico could choose to leverage its position within the USMCA trade agreement, potentially challenging or reinterpreting certain provisions to its advantage. For years, Mexico has cooperated with the United States in stemming the tide of Central American migrants seeking asylum north of the border, but Sheinbaum has signaled that this cooperation is not unconditional. However, there is a widespread understanding that the country's long-term interests are best served by standing up to what is perceived as United States bullying. The escalating trade tensions between the United States and Mexico have sent shockwaves through the global economy, with key industries bracing for impact. The automotive sector, heavily reliant on the integrated supply chains that straddle the border, is particularly vulnerable. United States automakers, accustomed to sourcing parts and assembling vehicles in Mexico to take advantage of lower labor costs, are now facing the prospect of disrupted production and higher prices. The agricultural industry is another casualty in this trade war. Mexico is a major supplier of fruits, vegetables, and other agricultural products to the United States. The interconnected nature of the global economy means that disruptions in one area can quickly cascade throughout the system. Section 5. The Migration Gambit, a human lever of power. In this high-stakes game of economic chess, migration has emerged as a powerful bargaining chip for Mexico. For years, Mexico has cooperated with the United States in stemming the flow of Central American migrants seeking asylum north of the border. However, President Sheinbaum has signaled that this cooperation is not unconditional. She has made it clear that Mexico will not be bullied into acting as a proxy border patrol for the United States. This shift in rhetoric has sent shockwaves through Washington, where the Trump administration has staked its political capital on a hardline immigration stance. The potential consequences of a breakdown in cooperation on migration are significant. The optics of such a crisis would be devastating for the Trump administration, particularly in an election year. Section 6. USMCA. A trade pact under fire. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the successor to the North American Free Trade Agreement, has become a focal point in the escalating trade war between the U.S. and Mexico. President Trump, who campaigned on a promise to renegotiate or scrap NAFTA, has touted the USMCA as a major victory for American workers. However, many experts argue that the new agreement offers only modest improvements over its predecessor and could even harm certain sectors of the U.S. economy. President Sheinbaum has hinted that Mexico could seek to renegotiate certain aspects of the agreement, particularly those related to labor standards and dispute resolution. The future of the USMCA is now uncertain. Section 7. Domestic discord, public opinion, and political fallout. The escalating trade war between the U.S. and Mexico is playing out against a backdrop of deep political divisions within both countries. In Mexico, President Sheinbaum's defiant stance against the Trump administration has garnered widespread public support. Many Mexicans view Trump's policies as an affront to their national sovereignty and are rallying behind their leader. In the United States, the trade war has further polarized an already divided electorate. The trade war is also causing headaches for Republican lawmakers from border states who are feeling the heat from constituents who rely on cross-border trade. Section 8. A new bloc emerges. Latin America's stand against dominance. The escalating trade tensions between the United States and Mexico have reverberated throughout Latin America, where there is a growing sense that the region needs to reduce its economic dependence on the United States. President Sheinbaum's defiant stance against the Trump administration has struck a chord with many Latin American leaders, who see it as a model for how to stand up to U.S. pressure. For decades, Latin America has been viewed as the United States' backyard, a region where the U.S. has exerted significant economic and political influence. However, the rise of leftist governments in Mexico, Argentina, and other countries has challenged this dynamic. These governments are increasingly assertive in their dealings with the United States and are seeking to forge closer ties with other global powers, such as China and Russia. President Sheinbaum has been at the forefront of this effort to build a more multipolar world order. The escalating trade war with Mexico is a stark reminder of this new reality.